The hospital bracelet is still on my wrist. I keep meaning to take it off. 3 days since they discharged me. And it's still there, a little strip of white plastic with my name typed in small black letters. Maja Chen. Dob 4, 14, 1990. Room 214. I sit by the window in my apartment. Coffee going cold beside me. Watching the morning traffic on the street below. Nobody knows I was in that hospital. Nobody from my family. Anyway. And that silence, that complete, unbroken silence from the people who were supposed to love me first, tells me everything I need to know about where I stand. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. I grew up in a house where love was distributed like a limited resource. My parents had 2 children, my brother Daniel and me, and somewhere along the way, they decided that Daniel was the investment worth making. He was 3 years older. Charming in the way that made adults ruffle his hair and say things like, "That boy is going somewhere." I was quieter. I liked books and math and sitting in the back of the classroom asking questions that made my teachers pause before answering. My mother used to call it showing off. She said it with a tight smile that made it clear she didn't mean it as a compliment. I don't want to paint my childhood as something out of a misery memoir. Because it wasn't all darkness. There were good dinners on Sundays and birthday cakes with real frosting and a dog named Biscuit who slept at the foot of my bed until he passed when I was 15. But underneath all of it ran this steady current, quiet, persistent, impossible to ignore, that made it clear Daniel mattered more. His baseball games were calendar events. My science fair placements were acknowledged with a nod. He got the car at 16. I got a bus pass and a reminder not to be ungrateful. He struggled through community college and my parents paid for tutors. Appeals. Second chances. I earned a full academic scholarship to a state university and my mother's response was, "Well, at least we won't have to worry about your tuition. No, we're proud of you. No, you worked so hard." Just relief that I would cost them nothing. The person who changed how I saw all of this was not a parent or a relative or anyone who shared my blood. Her name was Dr. Patricia Okafor. And she was my organic chemistry professor during my sophomore year of college, the class that ends medical school dreams for most people who attempt it. I was struggling. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I was also working 22 hours a week at the campus library and surviving on dining hall food and not sleeping enough. I failed my first midterm. Not by a little. By enough that I sat in a bathroom stall for 20 minutes afterward, staring at the floor tiles and wondering if I should just change my major. Dr. Okafor stopped me after class a week later. She didn't make a big production of it, just said, "Stay a moment, Maya." And then she sat across from me at her desk and asked me what was actually going on. Not in a clinical, box-checking way. In the way that made me understand, she genuinely wanted to know. I told her more than I intended to. About the job. About the sleep. About calling home once and mentioning I was stressed and my mother saying Daniel is stressed too. He has real pressure on him. Dr. Okafor listened to all of it without interrupting. Then she said something I have carried with me every day since. She said, "Maya, the people who underestimate you are writing a story about who you are. You don't have to live in it." She connected me to a departmental grant that covered my living expenses for the rest of the year. She let me retest. She wrote me a recommendation for a research internship that summer that changed the entire trajectory of my career. She didn't have to do any of it. I was one student in a lecture hall of 200. But she saw me, actually saw me, and that made all the difference. I graduated with honors. I went to medical school. My parents came to my college graduation because it would have looked strange not to. And my mother took a photo with me that she never posted anywhere. That same month, Daniel got a promotion at the sales job he'd held for 8 months. And she put that on Facebook with 17 exclamation points. Medical school is a specific kind of hard that I don't think I can fully explain to someone who hasn't done it. It hollows you out and rebuilds you, and hollows you out again. I called home less. Not because I was punishing anyone, I just stopped having the emotional bandwidth to manage both the program and my family's indifference. My father occasionally texted to ask how things were going. I would say fine. Busy. Learning a lot. He would say good, and that would be the extent of it. During my second year, Daniel's sales career started unraveling. He'd never been particularly disciplined about money. My parents had always smoothed things over, and now that he was in his early 30s with an apartment lease and a car payment, and a lifestyle that required more income than he was generating, the cracks started showing. He quit his job after a disagreement with his manager. He told my parents it was an ethical dispute. From what I could piece together from the few family calls I did take, it was actually about his commission structure and the fact that he'd missed his targets for 6 consecutive months. But in the family mythology, Daniel had made a principled stand. He was brave. He was starting fresh. My parents loaned him $40,000. I know this because my mother called me one of her rare calls and mentioned it almost offhandedly. The way you mention you've repainted a room. We helped Daniel get back on his feet. You know how it is. I asked how they had that kind of money available. There was a pause, and she said they'd refinanced part of the house. I sat with that for a moment. This family that had given me a bus pass at 16 had refinanced their home to fund my brother's fresh start, and I said I had to go because I had a patient simulation in 20 minutes. Which was true. I finished medical school. I matched into a residency program in internal medicine at a hospital in Charlotte, North Carolina, far from where I grew up in Ohio. And that distance felt like a gift. My residency was 3 years of work that I would not trade for anything and would also never choose to repeat. 90-hour weeks. Decisions that carried weight. A community of colleagues who became the closest thing I had to family because we were all surviving the same thing together. I did not invite my parents to my medical school graduation. I want to be precise about this because I've thought about it often since then. It wasn't a dramatic decision. It wasn't revenge. It was simply a quiet accounting of what their presence would cost me on a day that was supposed to feel like triumph. I had watched my mother's face during milestones, the slight tension in her jaw, the way her eyes would find something else to rest on, the comments that were framed as observations but landed like diminishments. I didn't want that on graduation day. I went with 3 friends from my cohort and Dr. Okafor, who drove 4 hours to be there, who cried when I crossed the stage, who held my face in both hands afterward and said I knew it. I always knew it. That day is a perfect memory and I protected it. My parents found out through a photo I posted. My mother texted, "Would have been nice to be there." I didn't respond. My father texted the next day, "Congratulations, doctor." 2 words followed by a period. I said thank you. Residency ended. I joined a practice in Charlotte. I was 29 years old. Earning a real salary for the first time in my adult life. Paying off loans on a schedule that actually made sense. Building something. I bought a condo, nothing extravagant. 2 bedrooms. A balcony that looked out over a small courtyard with a dogwood tree. I had a routine. I had colleagues I respected. I had quiet, which I had learned to value more than almost anything else. I did not have much contact with my family. It had tapered gradually rather than snapped all at once. Fewer calls. Shorter conversations. Longer gaps between them. I don't think I made a formal decision to pull back. I think I simply stopped reaching across a distance that no one on the other side was working to close. By the time I was 31, I was talking to my parents maybe 4 or 5 times a year holidays. Birthdays if I remembered. Occasional check-ins that felt more like obligation than connection. Daniel and I had not spoken in over 2 years. The last time we'd talked he had mentioned, with the casualness of someone asking you to pass the salt, that my parents were getting older, and it would be really nice if I contributed more to the family financially. Given my salary, I had ended the call. About 18 months ago, something happened that I haven't talked about publicly. I was diagnosed with a condition that required surgery, nothing life-threatening, but significant enough to require hospitalization. A week of recovery. And the kind of vulnerability that strips everything down to what actually matters. I was in that hospital bed. In that room, 214. And my phone was right there. I could have called my mother. I could have texted my father. I didn't. Because I already knew. With a certainty that had no bitterness in it anymore, just clarity that the call would not bring what I needed. It might bring worry that felt more like burden. It might bring my brother asking if this affected my ability to work. It might bring a conversation that left me feeling more alone than the silence did. Instead, I called a colleague named Renee, who came and sat with me the night before the procedure, and brought me a breakfast sandwich the morning I was discharged and drove me home without making me feel fragile. She is not my family by blood. She is my family by choice. There is a difference. And I have made my peace with it. The surgery went well. I recovered. I went back to work. And then, 4 months ago, I did something I had been quietly planning for almost a year. I bought a house. Not a starter home. Not a modest first purchase. I bought a house in one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in Charlotte, 4 bedrooms. A yard with 2 old oak trees. A kitchen with the kind of light that makes you want to cook elaborate meals even when you're tired. It cost just over $900,000. I put 20% down. The mortgage payment is high but manageable. I had saved aggressively for 5 years, and I had earned this. In every sense of the word, I had the keys for 2 weeks before I told anyone outside of my close circle. But I made one mistake. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake, maybe some part of me wanted to close the loop. I posted a photo on Instagram. Just one. The front of the house in afternoon light. The oak trees visible at the edge of the frame. A simple caption, home. I have a small following, mostly colleagues. Med school friends. A few people from my undergraduate years. I don't post often. I didn't think much about it. My mother called the next morning. I almost didn't answer. I looked at her name on the screen for 4 full rings, and then picked up because I had not spoken to her in 3 months, and something in me still even now. Even after everything hoped that this time would be different. That she was calling because she missed me. That she was calling just to hear my voice. She was not calling for that. Maya, she said. And her voice had the particular warmth she only used when she needed something. Your father and I have been thinking about you so much. We saw your photo. That house is absolutely beautiful. You have done so well for yourself. She paused. We were hoping we could talk. The 4 of us. Maybe a family dinner. Or a video call this weekend. There are some things we'd love to discuss. I asked her what things. She laughed that soft, deflecting laugh. Oh. Just catching up. Family things. Daniel has been going through some challenges, and we thought it would be good for all of us to connect. Daniel's challenges, she explained when I pressed. Included a failed business venture. He had started with my parents' money, a second investment they'd made in him. This one through a home equity line of credit that had not succeeded. He and his girlfriend had a 1-year-old daughter. They were behind on rent. My parents, who had depleted a significant portion of their retirement savings between the 2 loans, were now also struggling. My mother said the word family 7 times in that conversation. She said we need to stick together and blood is blood and we know you have the means to help. She never asked how I was. She never mentioned the surgery. Because she didn't know about it. And she didn't know about it because she had not asked. I told her I needed to think. I spent the next 3 weeks thinking. I talked to Renee. I talked to my therapist, who has been a fixture in my life since residency and who I consider one of the best decisions I have ever made. I thought about Dr. Okafor, who called me every year on my graduation anniversary, and who had retired now, and was living in Savannah and growing tomatoes in her backyard. I thought about the bus pass at 16. The Facebook post with 17 exclamation points. The $40,000. The home equity line of credit. Room 214 and the phone I had not used to call my mother. I thought about the story they had always told about me, the supporting character. The one who cost nothing and required nothing and could be reliably set aside, and I thought about what Dr. Okafor had said all those years ago. You don't have to live in it. Then I did something. I called my mother back and told her I would meet with them. Video call. That Saturday. She sounded relieved in a way that made me sad and resolute in equal measure. When Saturday came, I sat at the kitchen table in my new house, the one with the morning light coming through the windows and the oak trees visible from where I was sitting, and I opened my laptop. My parents' faces appeared on the screen. And then Daniel joined a few minutes late. And I noticed immediately that he looked tired in the specific way that comes from not dealing with a problem and hoping someone else will. My mother started with pleasantries. My father asked about work. Daniel said nothing. Just watched me. I let them settle. And then I said I had something I wanted to share before we talked about anything else. I told them about the foundation. 6 weeks earlier, I had established the Dr. LibreVox. Patricia Okafor Foundation for First-Generation Medical Students, a nonprofit. Properly structured. Tax-exempt. With an initial endowment of $250,000 funded by me personally. It would provide annual scholarships to first-generation college students pursuing medical school, with preference given to women from low-income households. The application process was already live. The first cohort of recipients would be selected in the spring. I had named it for the woman who had seen me when my own family hadn't bothered to look. The silence on the call lasted long enough that I could hear my father breathing. My mother found her voice first. That's Maya. That's very generous. That's wonderful. And then, because she couldn't help it. Because the whole architecture of her thinking had been built around a certain assumption. But surely, after something like that, you don't have we were hoping you might be able to help with Daniel's situation. And with your father's and I said. Clearly and without anger, I won't be doing that. She started to say something about family. I let her finish. Then I said what I had prepared. Because I had learned by then that unprepared words in emotional conversations come out jagged when they need to be clean. I said I have spent my entire life watching this family decide, in 100 small ways, and some very large ones, that I was the one who didn't need anything. No car at 16. No acknowledgement of my scholarship. No one at my college graduation. No call after my medical school graduation. No one who knew when I was in the hospital 18 months ago. I paused. I built everything I have without a single piece of support from this family. And I have made peace with that. But making peace with it doesn't mean I owe you the resources I built on my own. Daniel spoke for the first time. He said, So, you're just not going to help us, we're your family. I looked at him, at this person who had occupied so much of my parents' love and money and attention and had used it to arrive here. In his mid-30s. Behind on rent. Asking his sister, who he hadn't called in 2 years, to fix it, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just a deep, exhausted clarity. I said, the foundation will be helping 4 medical students this year who have no one to catch them if they fall. That's where my resources are going. I genuinely hope you find a way through this. But I'm not the way. I closed the laptop. I sat for a long time at that table in my house. With the light moving across the floor and the sound of someone's lawnmower faint in the distance, I thought I might cry. I didn't. What I felt was quieter than crying, something closer to setting down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of my body. My mother texted twice that evening. My father once. Daniel not at all. I read the messages. Put my phone face down on the counter. And made myself dinner. Pasta with the good olive oil. A glass of wine. Music playing from the speaker on the bookshelf. I ate at my own table in my own house that I had bought with money I had earned. And I thought about the 4 students who would receive letters in the spring telling them that someone believed in their future. I thought about Dr. Okafor in Savannah, tending her garden, not knowing yet that her name was on a foundation. I called her the next morning. She answered on the second ring, which is how she always answers, as if she has been expecting to hear from you. I told her what I had done. There was a long silence that was nothing like the silence on the family call. This one was full. She said, "Oh, Maya." Just that. And then she cried, which made me cry. Finally. In the good way, the kind that loosens something rather than tightening it. I am 33 years old. I am a physician. I own a house with 2 oak trees in the yard. I have colleagues who drive me home from hospitals and friends who remember my hard days and a mentor who grows tomatoes in Savannah and cried when I told her I'd named something after her. I do not have the family I was born into. I have grieved that properly. In a therapist's office. Over years. In the specific way that you have to grieve something that was never quite real to begin with. But I have something better. I have a family I built out of the people who chose to see me. The hospital bracelet is still on my wrist as I write this. I've decided to keep it a little longer, not as a reminder of pain, but as a reminder of who showed up. Renee. With a breakfast sandwich and no questions that would make me feel small. Dr. Okafor. 4 hours on a highway. Tears at a graduation. The version of me who lay in room 214 and decided, quietly, that she was worth more than what she'd been offered. She was right. She had always been right. She just needed time to believe it. If you are somewhere in the middle of this, still reaching across a distance, no one on the other side is trying to close, I want you to hear this. You are not the problem. You are not too much. Or too little. Or too complicated. You are a person who deserved to be seen from the very beginning. And it is never too late to start building toward the people who will gain